Good morning, MACPA members. I see people starting to join. We'll give it another minute or so because I know it takes a little bit to populate here. I do have the Conferences IO QR code up there. It's also in the event materials. If you scroll down from where you're watching the video, you can participate in the polls. I have all of them open right now, but we'll go through them one at a time as well. It looks like people joining has slowed a little bit, so I'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to our April town hall. Somehow it is already April and it's already the end of April. And I know that for some of you, it seems like you've been waiting for it to be on this side of April 15th for years. And some of you probably feel like it was just New Year's. So we are grateful that you're here and joining us. I'm Rebecca Olson, CEO of the MACPA, and we're delighted to have you. The QR code there that you see on the screen, you can put your phone up to that and participate in the polls, or you can scroll down from where you're watching the video, and we have some polls we'll go through like we usually do. So our first poll, we always start with good news. It's great to start a morning this way, but starting at any meeting, any tough conversation, anytime you're just feeling down, starting to remember some of the things that we're grateful for. So somebody's granddaughter's turning 4, tax season is over, although I hear it just doesn't really totally end anymore. But I know being on the other side of April 15th is certainly a exciting good thing. Spring, yes, and the weather is just beautiful. I have a wonderful window right in front of me, and it's just amazing to see that sun. Someone has a new granddaughter. Somebody passed the CPA exam. Congratulations. Welcome to this amazing profession. We are so grateful to have you. Somebody's going on a bike ride today. Fantastic day for that. Health is good. We are delighted. Somebody's in New Orleans joining us from Louisiana. Thanks for joining us. I know it's 8 a.m. there, so up early, starting your day well. Hopefully maybe you're at Cafe Du Monde having some good coffee and a beignet watching our town hall. We'll keep going and see a little bit about the attendees that we have today. So where do you work? Looks like the little horse race is on. I know it's really tiny on my screen. Hopefully it's a little bit bigger on your screen. But we have about, I feel like I say this every time, but it continues to be true. If we were to add up our sole practitioners and then the rest of the size of public accounting firms, we're probably about even with, I don't know, we might skew a little bit more actually. It looks like we have a good percentage of government team members with us today. Private company, looks like a good amount of retirees. We're always jealous of you, but thanks for joining and continuing to be an active member of this profession. I'll keep us going and see what position or level you are in your organization, just to get an idea of the tenure or the experience level of the folks on our town hall today. As seems to be the case, we generally skew pretty high level folks. So we're glad. We know you're busy professionals and that you take your time early on a Wednesday morning to join us. We are grateful. And then we've been asking this same question with the same choices actually since July. And I'm going to show you a little bit later this morning kind of the aggregate of those top challenges over the last several months. But and as I look through the others, I haven't had to add anything. So maybe that will change at some point, but we'll see how this turns out. what you're facing, challenges that you're facing now. We'll start moving around. Looks like it's starting to be a little more steady, just that personal and team well-being and inflation going back and forth there now. But it's maintained. When I show you the results of the aggregate, this is pretty similar. Finding talent, number one, then maintaining culture and managing hybrid workforce, need for new skills, retaining talent, personal and team well-being, and then cybersecurity. So you'll see that's been pretty consistent over the last, I guess, since July. So you'll see how we have resources and some things to tackle those as well. Just want to take a second and thank our preferred providers, our partners in this. I'm not really sure what's going on with the Aon logo there. Apologize for that. But these are our partners. They are our partners in bringing you resources, in keeping us future ready, ahead of the curve. Had a wonderful meeting yesterday with Aon talking about trends. I actually used some of the CHOP challenges data with them to share, here's what our members are facing, what resources do you have in these areas that we can really benefit our members. And so we're grateful for these organizations that partner with us. We're excited about our spring conferences. I know our GNFP conference was just this Monday, and it was sold out in person, I heard, which is fantastic, and excited about, I know our BNI is coming up, and our forensics educators. I'm probably missing one, but excited about those conferences, as well as our beach retreat and our Elevate and Celebrate event that I'll talk a little bit about later as well, as a time to celebrate our members and our volunteers, and interact with some of these preferred providers, these folks that provide great resources to you all as our members. I'm going to open up one other poll, and I'll just leave that open, and that's the future town hall topics. Always good to hear from you all, what you want to hear from or what you want to hear about. And the top two that I saw pop in even before we even started the meeting were a Maryland legislative update and personnel recruitment training retention. And I'm happy to say, I think we're going to cover some of both of those. One, I know we're going to cover this morning, our Maryland legislative update. But then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the pipeline activities and what's going on in the profession nationally and locally as well. I see someone said health and wellness, self-care in the CPA industry. That's actually next month's town hall. So be sure you're registered for that. We're going to have a wellness kind of update and that topic. So put those topics in there. I'll leave all the rest of the polls open in case you didn't have a chance to participate yet and would like to. And with that, I'm actually going to invite our special guests. So we have Nick Manis and Andrea Mansfield. They are with Manis Canning and Associates. Manis Canning has been our advocacy partner in Annapolis for, Nick, 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, you've only been in business 50 years. So, but I'm thinking it's been maybe that long.
Right. It's been close to 40 years. Yeah.
40 years. Yeah. Just amazing partner. Such a great resource for us and advocate for our profession in Annapolis. And so I'm going to stop sharing so you can see Nick and Andrea. and they're going to kind of give us a little update what happened. General Assembly session just ended a few weeks ago. It was certainly an exciting 90 days. So much happens in that 90 days. I heard about like 2,300 maybe bills go through, but I will leave it to the experts to kind of give you an update on what happened there. If you have any questions, we have the social Q&A, and we'll try and bring those to them as well. But I'll let them take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca and Bill. As Rebecca said, my name's Nick Manis with Manis Canyon and Associates, and also joining is Andrew Mansfield. And like you, we are happy when your big date is April 15th. Ours this year was April 8th. So the Maryland legislature was the 446th legislative session this year. They start on the second Wednesday of January and go for 90 days. This year it ended on April 8th. And as Rebecca mentioned, this year there was 2,728 bills that were introduced, 500 more than compared to Governor Moore's first session, and passed were 1,053. Now we probably could do with passing probably 50 bills instead of 1,053 because most of them, it's everywhere from naming the state animal to various other types of issues. But this year, going into this session, we knew that the revenue situation was going to be a hot topic this session, and also a transportation funding. And the House and the Senate had different ideas, and the governor had different ideas how to take care of that. But before we get to the revenue, I think there's some other issues that are of interest that came up that the CPAs are always involved with. One that would have lifted the caps on non-economic damages on lawsuits. The trial bar is always looking to change the legal situation here in Annapolis to favor trial attorneys, and this would have raised the non-economic damage cap from approximately 925,000 to 1.750, and that bill ended up dying at the last day of session, so no change there. There was also a bill that was introduced that the CPAs are always one of the leaders in opposing, dealing with contributory negligence. And there was a bill in this year to study that issue. Fortunately, that bill was withdrawn also. Some of the other issues that gained a lot of attention in Annapolis were data privacy. After 5 years, a data privacy bill has been passed, not only a general data privacy, but a child privacy bill also was passed. Some people are happy, some people aren't happy, which means that it's a happy medium. I don't know. I don't think we'll see the full impact of that till everybody digests it, sees what's in it and how it applies in a regular setting. As I said, with all these bills introduced, they only have 90 days, and there's no way everyone, reads every single bill that gets introduced. So a lot of times they'll come back and tweak it the following year once they find out the true impact in a regular business setting or personal setting. Also, Pimlico, the Jockey Club, and the Preakness. What has happened with that? That took a lot of time and went down to the last day. The state is going to take over the running of the Preakness and own Pimlico. The Jockey Club, Stronach, who owns the racetracks, will continue to own Laurel, but eventually they'll probably be getting out of that also, and there'll be one track, and it'll be at Pimlico. Climate change was also a big issue this year and will continue to be. I was just telling Rebecca, I live in downtown Annapolis, and usually I can walk to work. And today, because of the flooding, which we had no rain or anything else, couldn't walk to work. So it's that's an issue that will always be front and center for the near future, as far as we can tell. And then, of course, everyone knows within the last couple of weeks, the travesty with the Key Bridge, which took everyone's attentions as it should. And our heart goes out to those 6 that lost their lives and their families. Fortunately, the responders that were there did an excellent job of stopping traffic, so we didn't face a more of a tragic deaths that would have occurred. So there was a rush to put in legislation dealing with funding, expediting permits and things like that, that hopefully will get the construction of that bridge, opening up the port that impacted many businesses around the port, but also throughout the country. Excuse me. So those were some of the other major issues besides revenue that we're going to discuss. And also, I think it's important. We have a primary set for May 14th, which is only a couple weeks. Maryland, we have 3 congressmen retiring, Congressman Sarbanes, Congressman Trone, and Rubersberger. And we also have a senator, Senator Cardin is retiring. So just to give you an idea of some of the dynamics that people don't see, we have 6 current legislators that are running for Sarbanes' seat, 2 current legislators that are running for Trone's seat, and then we have Trone, who's running, and Johnny Oshesky, the county exec for Baltimore County, is running for Rupersberger's seat. And knowing all those seats will most likely stay Democratic just because of how the districts are drawn, that election will be in 2 weeks. So it's important for you to cast your vote and be part of the process. And that the big election is not November for those key seats. It's going to be May 14th. And then also running for the Senator Cardin seat, you have a very contested Democratic primary with Trone and the Prince George's County exec, also Brooks, running in the Democratic primary, and then waiting in the wings to take that whoever wins that Democratic primary will be ex-Governor Hogan, who has decided to run for Cardin's seat. So there's a lot of play, as you can imagine, if, let's say Senator Elfreth had a bill, she's one of the running for Sarbanes' seat, and a delegate on the House side is running for the seat, and she has a bill, there might be some games played there just because they're running against each other in the election. Also, we had incentive finance, where a lot of CPAs, as far as licensings and things of those issues go, business issues. Senator Pam Vital was the chairman of that committee for the first year. She did a very good job for being chairman of that for her first year. And then we understand that Senator Kelly, Adriana Kelly, who just got moved over to the Senate this year, is retiring to take another position. So Delegate Love from Montgomery County is going to be moving up and taking, at least we think of now, being nominated to take her seat in the Senate. So even though there's the general election for the governor and the Senate and state delegates isn't for another 2 years, there will be some changes based on the congressional elections, and also just people that are currently retiring or getting into other types of work. Excuse me. So those are some of the general issues and just some of the general overview of the state legislature. Now I know that some of the most important things you're concerned about is revenue, and very early on, the Senate president said that they felt that they could get out of this session without passing any new taxes. The governor seemed to be in line with the Senate also, but the House had a different sense of opinion. So the House Chairman of Appropriations put in a few bills, one increasing the alcohol tax and also increasing the tobacco tax. And then there was also a bill in House Bill 1515 that would have lowered the sales tax from 6% to 5%, but would have broadened its base, including tax services. So that bill, House Bill 1515, and all the tax bills, because the Senate said that they weren't going to pass any taxes. And what typically happens, the budget has to be passed within 2 weeks of a week of the final day of or a couple days before session. It got down to the end, and the House wasn't budging off taxes, and the Senate wasn't budging off their no tax position. And what finally occurred is we being the CPA Association, along with a lot of other industries, were able to defeat the sales tax on services bill. But they did pass they ended up agreeing on passing a cigarette tax, which the majority of people, don't smoke anymore. However, just to give you an idea, now in Maryland, the tax on a pack of cigarettes, before you even add in the cost of the cigarettes, is $5 a pack. So we're second highest in the nation, except for New York. And we're also known as one of the highest states that have that are importing smuggled cigarettes. So that will just, steadily increase. There was a push from the House to increase the alcohol tax, and that was defeated on the last day also. So they looked to pack, at least agreed on taxes that there's not going to be a lot of public uproar about. Cigarette tax, those that smoke probably wish they didn't. So that was one of the taxes, along with a lot of other transportation related taxes, titling fees for cars, tolls. There was a increased tax on electric vehicle registrations, just because they're heavier and wear out roads quicker, supposedly, because you have two issues, and I'll let Andrea, who deals with the budget more than I do, but you have two funding issues that are in play here. One, just the general fund, this general budget of the state, but then we have a large deficit in transportation funding. So currently Maryland has a work group made up of private and governmental agencies and individuals looking at ways to fund transportation so we can continue to build infrastructure and also keep our current roads in drivable condition. And then you have the general fund. So that's a brief overview. I'll let Andrew get into more specifics. But let me just say that the sales tax on service issue is not going away. And just like your profession, even though you're under the gun up until April 15th. You still work the rest of the year, and that's the same thing with the legislature. So it might not be 24/7 down here in Annapolis, but they are still meeting. They'll be talking. They're already going to be looking at planning for next session to deal with the deficit, because what they did was just pushed it to the 2025. So we'll be continuing to monitor that situation, but it is something that we'll keep our eye on. And when Andrew is done on the transportation, we can talk about what the future is going to look like. Andrew, do you want to fill in on all the gaps that I had?
Yep. You didn't leave a lot of gaps. It was good. It's a great overview, actually. And you touched most, I think pretty much everything. But yeah, so it was interesting. And you, if those of you who are listening, if you participated, I think it was January, Natasha and I, we talked a little bit about just revenues of the state, budget challenges kind of going into the session. We talked a lot about really the blueprint, or may refer to it as more the Kerwin Commission that had met for several years, and that there's basically it was looking at a $4 billion increase in education spending. We also had the state, trying, especially the new administration, the board administration, trying to beef up state government. There were a lot of vacancies in agencies and so forth. So wanting to convert contractual positions to full-time positions, which puts additional pressures in terms of benefits and so forth on the budgets. So you kind of you have Kerwin, you had new positions, but at the same time, we were also, revenues were not coming in at the same level as anticipated. So, it was almost like the administration early on, going even back to the summer, was kind of laying some groundwork like, hey, we know things are going to be tight. We're going to have to tighten our belts, work in partnership to kind of get our budget in order. But as things, progressed, they really started looking more closely at what the gap was, even though they still have this, $4 billion expense they need to cover, really with major structural effects looking at fiscal 28 to 29 timeframe. I think they were starting to realize that the more immediate gap was not as large as they thought it was, and that they could do some of the same types of funding transfers and things within the budget as they've done previously to try to mitigate that and close that gap. So yeah, as Nick indicated, really the governor came out saying that he has a really high bar for increasing taxes. I don't know if we really know what high bar means necessarily and what it is that triggers that high bar for him in his mind. But we also had the Senate coming up very strongly saying, no, we're not increasing taxes this year, which in some ways was interesting because, if there is a time to increase taxes in the past, if you look back over the last several administrations, the second year of the term was the year to do it, because I guess the rationale is by the time you're running for election again, people forget or they start seeing what some of the benefits were from that tax increase. But the Senate was definitely aligned with the administration against that. The Senate moved the budget first this year. As if you probably know, they alternate between the House and the Senate each year. So the Senate moves the budget bill first one year, the House moves it first the next year. There's also the Budget Financing Reconciliation of Financing Act that accompanies the budget that allows them to make statutory adjustments to reduce funding, to increase funding, to do tax increases and things like that. But yeah, it was really clear the House was very determined that they were going to put together a tax package this year, but also with transportation reductions being announced early on. I guess that was early January when the administration came out with cutting of projects, and the House was also really determined to come up with a package to raise revenue to close that gap. And they really wanted, like Nick mentioned, the Train Commission. And don't ask me exactly what TRAIN stands for, but it's the big transportation commission that's looking at transportation revenues and things. And the House wanted to basically say, we don't need this TRAIN commission anymore. We're going to increase revenue for transportation and do away with that and move on. As Nick mentioned, they had the broader sales tax on services. They were looking at combined reporting. They had a bunch of other things in the Budget Reconciliation Act, but ultimately where they ended up was really kind of, raising some revenue, as I'll say, in some ways around the edges to close that gap. They did a lot of fund transfers, the cigarette tax, that was specifically to help fund Kerwin. The increase, the vehicle registration fees, vehicle excise charges, transportation network company, impact fees, electric vehicle surcharges. They did all of these things to really, and they're raising about $233 million to go towards transportation to start closing that gap, and about $130 million to help put, to kind of start paying down on the Kerwin funding right now. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to, to follow and be involved in those discussions when you had one side really just kind of hell bent, nope, we want to do this, and the other side, and, because it also leaves some of the other issues that you're working on that are budget related that might not be tied directly to the taxes. It leaves all your other things vulnerable too, because you don't know how they may decide to make those decisions and what they want to fund or not fund, and what may all of a sudden now go towards these other pots they're trying to fill. So it's definitely lots of ups and downs and things, but they worked it out, and so here we are. I guess so it does raise questions though, as Nick was saying, so over the next year, like what's next? The continued conversations on sales tax on services. It does get them closer to election time again. The Senate seems somewhat resident, but we don't know what the revenue outlook is going to be over the course of the next year either, and how that may play into some of the decisions, and what they start negotiating or what they want to put on the table for next session at this point in time.
Thank you, Andrea. And I think it's important to note for those of you on the call that don't know, Maryland is overwhelmingly a Democratic state, and it's shown in the legislature. They have overwhelming majorities. So the sales tax on services bill could have very easily passed the House. And the makeup of the Democrats in the House have a liberal bent, and they're supportive of such taxes. So that's why it was almost like a trial balloon that went up to say, let's see who we hear from on House Bill 1515. And that's where the CPA involvement, as Rebecca said, we've been involved for a while, but with the CPA Association, one of the advantages you have over 90% of the organizations and the industries represented down here is you have a large membership that most of the time is very involved, because it can't be done without the participation of each and every one of you and all 8,000 members that you have, because it's good that they hear from us, your team on the ground, and it's good they hear from Rebecca. But at the end of the day, they're going to look more and more to their constituents at home, who their actual CPA is, and who's going to pull that voting trigger for them when it's time to vote. So, and also who's going to participate in their fundraisers and their events that they have that shows them support. So, if there's one thing you get out of this call, is know that your participation in the political process, and also in the ability to participate in their events that they have, are very, very important. And defeating such bills like sales tax on services, that is definitely going to come back. Can't be done without your participation. So looking towards next year, they'll be talking about this issue over the interim, revenue enhancements and how to increase it. I'm sure they'll be talking about increasing the income taxes on high income earners. Now, to some that might seem like a good idea, and there's a lot of, very wealthy people that are said, we'll pay our fair share. But in Maryland, we don't know what the definition of high income earners are. I can guarantee you it's way below 400,000. It's probably somewhere in the, 100 to 150 is most of the people in Maryland probably thinks that's a very high income earner and their income taxes should, be raised. So there's a strong contingent of elected officials that, feel that way. And that's just the makeup. So that's where it's important to point how it's not only going to impact you as a CPA individually, but how it impacts the company you might work for, the clients you represent. And because revenue is enhancements are coming, it's just how they're going to, what form they're going to look to take. So Rebecca, I think that gives us a quick overview, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, it's interesting what you just said, Nick, because I had just read an article, I think it came out maybe a week or two ago, about the salary needed to live comfortably in each state. And you said that 100 to 150, and Maryland's, and I just pulled it up, was 102,918. So to live comfortably, you would be in that range, which is just very interesting. But that would be considered, as you're saying, maybe a high income earner. So very, very interesting. We did have one question about the I guess growth rate. So it says the governor also has stated one of his goals is to improve the Maryland economy as a way to increase revenue. More businesses, more jobs equals more income tax, sales tax. And then the comptroller's report that she released, I guess, in the fall showed that poor growth rate compared to other states in particular. What are you hearing about proposals for improving and growing Maryland's economy?
So that position is always one that, of course, the pro-business legislators take. And it's conversations that, unfortunately, they get some traction, and there are some bills that pass, but nothing like those that feel that there should be more, let's say, business incentives, that tax credits for job creation, things of that nature. Just don't get off the ground versus those that just think, again, the high income earners are getting away with, not paying their fair share. So that's the type of attitude that the Senate president had this year. I went to one of his pre-session breakfasts, and that's exactly what he talked about, is that he meets with Senate presidents in neighboring states and all across the country, and all they talk about is how they can increase commercial activity, expand businesses, attract new businesses. But then on the other hand, you have a large majority that feels they're already doing everything they can to attract businesses. And part of it's our own, because we're so close to DC, and you have all the federal workers, you have two major hospitals, and they see the growth in the press and everything like that, and they think it's here, and that they just have to do more on those that they feel can afford to pay it that aren't. So there's there's groups out there that just like we promote our ideas, that they promote theirs. There's a bill in, gosh, now it escapes me, Andrew, I don't know if you remember, it's a group and it's doing nationwide that increases Senator from Montgomery County had it in, and Jessica Palovich Carr had it in.
Yeah.
That's supported by the unions. We have a very strong union presence in Maryland, of course, and it had multiple things in there, and that's going to be coming back. And I think it dealt with income taxes, all those types of things that I apologize for not having it off the top of my head.
Is that the fair share plan?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Which in a way isn't as bad as, well, it's comparable to tax on services, but in a different way.
And that had the combined reporting as part of it, correct?
Correct.
As well, yes.
And combined reporting, I know that's a tough one because you have even Maryland businesses, you have some that it would benefit, some that it would not benefit. So even within the business community, there's differences of opinion. And that is one where if you ask your general Maryland citizen or 80% of the Maryland constituency what is combined reporting, they have no idea. So it has support in the House, but has has not passed in the Senate, and I'm not sure there's appetite there. However, it's one that could pass, and the general public would not know what it means, and they wouldn't hold it against most elected officials when they went to the vote for them.
And I know our position on that has always been, because you mentioned, half of our members it would benefit or benefit their clients, half of our members it would hurt. And so we've been more about the implementation of it and how making sure that it was implemented correctly. The comptroller's office was properly funded and had the technology to actually do such a thing. So it was more about that timeline, I think, when we were to, speak out on that. I do see some more questions. One about the increase funding of K through 12 schools. Will there be more state oversight on spending and results? Do you see that as part of that?
Actually, yes. There will be a lot. As a part of that, when they passed the blueprint legislation, they also created the Accountability Implementation Board. And that entity and that body, they are there really to review all of the plans as the funds start flowing into K-12. There's five pillars, and it runs from career technical education to like pre-K. There's a teacher, and then there's an accountability pillar as well. So this body, as local school systems, they develop their plans and they have their benchmarks, and they know what things that they're supposed to achieve. That Accountability Implementation Board will be reviewing those plans every year to look to see, okay, well, are students progressing? Are they meeting these benchmarks? If they're not meeting those benchmarks, they can then cut the funding and reduce the funding by certain amounts in order to provide that incentive for the local school systems to kind of step up their game and actually achieve those benchmarks. So that was a big piece of it. They definitely wanted to have that accountability process. As you can imagine, it's creating some consternation for the local school systems and how they work through this process and pull together their plans. But yes, there is definitely an accountability piece to that.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that also, there was a question about if cost increases are being driven by Kerwin expenses, what is being done to reduce those costs. I would imagine that is that answer as well. It's more going to be accountability if there's not results from that. I wouldn't think they would cut the costs before implementation.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We did have one question. I guess it's an interesting one. You know, a lot with post-COVID and remote working, a lot of empty or available office spaces. MACPA offices is going to be one of them. We're moving to a smaller location in the next year as well. Any discussion in the legislature about empty office buildings and reuse ideas? Does that ring a bell for either of you?
So that's a good question. We represent an association that is commercial builders and developers, and I was just up at Baltimore Peninsula last night, the big development up there where Under Armour's headquarters are, and I was talking to the people from Under Armour where the building is going to be. It's a brand new building. It's going to be completed, I think, maybe this coming fall, early next year. And they had to totally rework their original plan that they were building there to accommodate a lot fewer people, just because they would love to get people back in the office, but you know, it's difficult. There has not been any talk, to my knowledge, about how we can take these, you know, buildings and reuse them. I know part of the difficulty now that you have with the existing commercial builders, we talked a little bit about the climate change, is that the legislature and the plans are to move everyone from, you know, gas and heat and coal to all electric. So the existing buildings that are, you know, vacant now are going to have to go through major expenses just to the word's not coming to me, but transfer from, you know, gas to all electric. But there has been no discussions, to my knowledge, of you know, how can we, let's say, whether turn them to condos, as I know that some other states are looking to do, but nothing specific to that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when there were a few bills introduced dealing with affordable housing, the governor had a major initiative to change density requirements and like level of adequate public facilities around, and creating more multi-family and incorporating more multi-family homes into like single dwelling zone spaces and things. It didn't get into that specifically, but this is more just, you know, I know in Baltimore City, they're having conversations about office space and using it as condos and making some of those transitions. So maybe we'll see more of that coming up.
Yeah, maybe those things will help each other. And then somebody asked about the casino funding, that they thought that was going to fund education. So is that funding not, I guess, enough, or how is it being used?
Yeah, I don't think it's enough, right, Andrea?
Yeah, no, it's not enough. And, you know, and when they did that, you know, as that was a simple answer is what's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say it also, I mean, when that passed, it also, when those dollars started coming in, you know, could not supplant, but because you had these new revenues coming in, it did free up pressure on the general fund in other areas. So as, you know, as those costs go up and there's other pressures, it leaves a gap. There's just not enough to cover the full $4 billion of expenses for that.
Right.
And there was one.
And the casinos pay for, besides education, they pay, you know, we talked earlier about the horse racing. Some of the money goes there. I mean, they have the casinos paying, they're trying to pay for a lot of things, but yeah, it doesn't come close to the number that Andrea just threw out there for the blueprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
then any
struggle. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Any discussion on the offshore wind project in Ocean City? I'm not sure. I don't know anything about that personally, but did you see?
Yeah, I know a little. I know that one company has withdrawn their proposal. I forget the name of it. I know that there's a mix.
Orsted,
Orsted, yeah. So they're no longer building. And then I know that it's just there's some that are for and some that are against, and so I'm not sure the current status if that's going to move forward or not yet.
I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again. Thank you. Looks like that covers our questions. Thank you so much, Nick and Andrea, for joining us. I hope you get to take a vacation soon. I know this has been a crazy 90 days, and it certainly will continue. But I wanted to get to this and give this time to sit up there for you all of our members. I also put it in the chat. I think that you're able to see. And if you scroll down from where you're watching the video, you'll see the link. So we'll give it to you in multiple ways. But as Nick mentioned, we are anticipating the House bringing that sales tax and services back. And while the Senate was, not pro tax legislation raising taxes this year, who knows what next year will bring. And so all of that takes relationships. Nick talked about each and every one of you, those grassroots members at CPA Day. Super important, those key people. So if you are a CPA for a representative, please let us know. If you're a friend, a neighbor, a former colleague, or schoolmate with someone, those personal connections mean a lot. We track those and we don't bother you a whole lot unless we need to. And so have your address updated in our system so that we can map you to your legislator. Have any key contacts you have, please let us know. And then certainly our PAC. And this is how we're able to take part in creating relationships with our representatives, going to fundraisers and things like that. And so I know if we just had every member give $25, we'd probably be fully funded. It doesn't take that much if we have all 100% participation, but of course we know we don't. So whatever you are able to give, please do, that we can really start to have that war chest, as Tom used to call it, for this next season as we prepare to make those relationships, continue those relationships with our representatives. It is so very important. And I actually get an email every time you donate, so they make me very happy. So if you want to make my day today, and Mary Beth Halpern, our Director of Advocacy, please consider donating to our PAC.
I'll just throw in there,
yes, please.
Rebecca, that for instance, the trial bar, the unions, all those organizations that a lot of times were opposing what they're trying to do are one of the largest, have some of the largest PAC committees in the state. I know, look, it's the day after session, we started getting calls from legislators because they can't fundraise during the 90 days.
Right.
And it's one of the worst things in this business, but it's part of the business. And if you gotta, pay to play, and it's not that you have to have, crazy amounts, but you have to be part of the process. And the other thing it does, it helps individuals when if they get calls from legislators or anything else, they can say, well, I know that the PAC is giving to you, to defer the pressure of the members. But as I said, it's very important to, especially those that help us, right, and hear our voice and work on our behalf, take our positions in committee, voice our concerns, voice it on the floor. I mean, they deserve you know, our attendance at their fundraisers and contributions. So it's a very, very important part of the process. And then I'll just mention one other thing. Don't forget May 14th, because that's the primaries that a lot of these elections are going to be. The outcome is going to be on May 14th, not in November. So partake in that process.
Yes, definitely important to be part of that process. Well, you all, our members, had amazing questions. And so I had some pipeline updates prepared, but we're not going to have time for them, which is perfectly fine. I do want to skip ahead to one last thing that I'm going to ask you to do. And that is to take the pipeline survey. So the National Pipeline Advisory Group, which is chaired by our own past chair, Lexi Kessler, is doing a survey. It closes May 3rd. And so they want your thoughts on both short-term and long-term solutions as we create more workforce development for our profession so that we aren't in these crisis modes in terms of talent, creating that pipeline for the future. So you can do that with the QR code. There is a separate student survey. So if you know any students, if you're an educator, please pass this link along to them as well, so they can take that student survey. But if you would participate in this, give your thoughts so that the group that's working nationally really to create a workforce development program and succession for our great profession has your thoughts on that. Closes May 3rd. You can use the QR code or go to accountingpipeline.org or scroll down from where you're watching this town hall. And I did get a bunch of emails, well, 2 so far, so I need more emails, but thank you, Alice. Thank you, Lauren. I feel like I'm doing a telethon here, but we really do appreciate you all joining us this beautiful April morning. We look forward to seeing you in May at our town hall, which will be on wellness. Looking forward to that. Coach Lowell Whiteman actually will be joining us on that town hall. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is go check out some of the upcoming events. I'm super excited to have our first annual foundation golf tournament coming up on June 13th. Really important fundraiser for things like scholarships and some of these pipeline activities that we're doing, as well as our annual meeting at Town Hall and Celebrate event on June 26th. Our beach retreat, our educators conference. I know our BNI conference is coming up in May. Employee benefits, forensics. I'm probably missing one, as I said earlier, but look forward to seeing you in person soon at one of those events. And again, thank you so much, Nick and Andrea, for joining us for our town hall and giving us this great update. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.